Before I begin this disturbing tale, I need to warn you that what you're about to hear completely changed my perspective on the reality we think we know. Many will say it's just another horror story, but I assure you that every word that will come out of my mouth is as real as the air you're breathing right now. I invite you to make yourself comfortable, dim the lights if you wish, and prepare for a story that will make you question whether we're truly alone in this world. It all began on a night that seemed ordinary, like countless others in my life. My husband and I had gone out to the pharmacy to pick up some medicine. The clock showed 9 p.m., and we decided to take a shortcut through a rarely traveled street. The air was unusually cold for a summer night, and a sepulchral silence enveloped the environment. The street lamps cast distorted shadows on the pavement, creating figures that seemed to dance with each flicker of the lights. As we slowly drove down that desolate street, something caught my attention. In front of an old house, one of those that seemed to harbor century-old secrets between their peeling walls, was what at first glance appeared to be a child. They were sitting on the entrance steps, head buried between their knees, as if immersed in deep crying. My heart shrank at the sight. As a mother, I couldn't help but feel deep compassion. Poor thing, their mother must have scolded them. I commented to my husband, who just nodded as we continued our way to the pharmacy. But there was something about that image that left me unsettled, a disturbing sensation that clung to my mind like an invisible cobweb. Throughout our entire stay at the pharmacy, I couldn't stop thinking about that lonely child. Questions multiplied in my head. Why were they alone at this hour? Where were their parents? Were they in trouble? The unease grew with each passing minute, and a strange urgency to help took hold of me. I convinced my husband to return by the same route. Just to make sure they're okay, I said, although deep down, a voice warned me that something wasn't quite right. To my surprise, the figure remained exactly in the same position, as if time had frozen at that specific point in the universe. As we got closer, the details began to change subtly. It no longer looked like a child, but rather a young woman. Her long blonde hair fell like a curtain over her knees, and she wore shorts, a t-shirt, and sneakers. Her legs were extremely thin, almost skeletal, which increased my concern. Something inside me screamed to get away, but another part of me, perhaps the most naive, insisted on helping. My husband parked the truck right in front of the house. The engine remained running, as if even the vehicle sensed we should be ready to flee. I gathered my courage and, from the window, asked with a trembling voice, "Hey, are you okay? Do you need anything? Can we help you with something?" What happened next will haunt me until the day I die. The figure slowly raised its head, and horror seized every cell in my body. It wasn't a young woman. It wasn't even a normal person. It was an old woman, but not just any old woman. Her hair, which up close was completely white like the purest snow, framed a face that seemed taken from the worst nightmares. Where her eyes should have been, there were only 2 deep black holes, so dark they seemed to absorb light itself. They were like portals to an infinite abyss, windows to a void that no human being should contemplate. Time seemed to stop while those lifeless holes bore into us, as if they could see directly into our souls. My husband, who until that moment had remained silent, let out a choked scream and stepped on the accelerator with all his might. The truck roared into the night as we sped away. My heart was beating so hard I thought it would burst from my chest, and my hands were shaking uncontrollably. But the terror didn't end there. As we fled, an oppressive sensation invaded us. It was as if something was following us, something that moved between the shadows, something that shouldn't exist in our world. The air inside the truck became heavy and cold, and a sickly sweet smell, like rotting flowers, filled our nostrils. When we finally reached our street, thinking the worst had passed, a supernatural scream tore through the night air. It was a sound that didn't belong to this world, a mixture between a woman's lament and the shriek of a dying animal. We looked up and saw a huge owl flying directly over our truck. Its eyes glowed with an unnatural reddish gleam, and for a moment, I swore they had the same empty depth as the holes in that old woman's face. That night we couldn't sleep. We stayed awake until dawn, embracing each other, jumping at every little noise, fearing that thing had followed our trail to our house. For weeks, we obsessively checked every dark corner, every suspicious shadow. Nightmares became frequent, and in them, those black holes pursued us tirelessly. Years have passed since that night, but the fear remains as fresh as if it had happened yesterday. My husband and I rarely talk about what happened, but when we do, our versions match perfectly in every disturbing detail. Some people tell us it must have been a shared hallucination. Others suggest that perhaps it was a trick of the light or the result of our tired minds playing a cruel joke. But we know the truth. What we saw that night was real as the fear that still paralyzes us when we remember those empty eyes looking directly into our soul. Sometimes, on particularly dark nights, when the silence is too deep, I wonder if she's still there, sitting on those steps, waiting for her next victim, waiting for someone else who cares enough to stop and help. And you, dear viewers, the next time you see someone in need of help on a dark street, think twice before stopping, because sometimes compassion can lead us to face horrors that our minds aren't prepared to understand. If this story raised the hair on the back of your neck as much as it raises ours to remember it, don't forget to give this video a like. Leave your comments telling us if you've ever experienced something similar, and of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more sinister stories like this one. Because believe me, there are many more horrors hidden in the darkness of night, waiting to be told. The first scream I heard was not human. It came from somewhere below me, a guttural howl that seemed to pierce the concrete walls like wet paper, a sound that froze my blood before my feet even touched the first step. My name is Michael Torres, and I work as a systems analyst at Nexus Corporation, a 10-story building located in the financial heart of the city. That night, everything began with a simple power outage that would transform my existence forever. It was 9:47 p.m. when the lights flickered and went out. The emergency system took a few seconds to activate, projecting a ghostly white light that turned every corner of the office into an irregular shadow canvas. My colleagues began to move nervously, some pulling out their phones to illuminate themselves, others quickly heading towards the exits. The evacuation order sounded clear and precise through the speakers. All employees, use the stairs calmly and in order. Do not use the elevators. A standard protocol that I had practiced dozens of times during emergency drills. What happened next defies all logical explanation. I went down the stairs with my briefcase in hand, following a group of colleagues. The atmosphere was dense, charged with a strange electricity that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Each step creaked under my weight, a metallic and unnatural sound that did not correspond to the modern construction of the building. 20 minutes later, something changed. I realized I had been descending for too long. Normally, going down 10 floors would take me barely 5 minutes, but I had already counted more than 30 steps and was still far from seeing the end. The group of colleagues who preceded me had disappeared, as if they had faded between the shadows. The emergency lighting was increasingly dim, transforming from a bright white to a sickly yellow that reminded me of the color of psychiatric hospitals. The walls began to show a strange deterioration. Cracks that did not exist before serpentined between the concrete, and dark stains, almost like dried blood, appeared without reason. I counted the steps as a method to maintain my sanity. 40, 50, 70 steps. It was mathematically impossible. The building had only 10 floors, and I had already descended the equivalent of more than 30. The smell of humidity and rot began to invade the atmosphere. It was not the typical smell of mold or a damp basement, but something more primordial, more organic, like the smell of decomposing meat mixed with wet earth. Then I heard the footsteps. They were not mine. They came from below, a heavy and dragging rhythm that did not correspond to any human movement. Something was moving in the darkness, something that did not want to be seen, but whose presence was undeniable. My breathing accelerated. Panic began to climb up my throat like a poisonous spider. The steps now seemed endless, curving in ways that defied Euclidean geometry. The walls moved away and approached with an undulating movement, as if breathing. The footsteps kept descending with me. I could not see what was following me, but I could feel its presence. An entity that did not belong to any known realm, something prior to our understanding of reality. Suddenly, I understood that I was no longer going downstairs. I was descending towards something that was waiting for me, something that had always been waiting. If you are listening or reading this story, I want you to know something. Reality is more fragile than you imagine. The boundaries between what we know and the unknown are thinner than a paper. If you like this story that defies all logic, I ask you to leave your like, share a comment telling us what you felt, and subscribe to our channel. Here we will continue revealing stories that will shake the foundations of your perception of reality. Remember, some doors should not be opened. Some stairs should not be descended.